Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Non-Native Leader, my video podcast series where we share, we explore, and we talk about stories of people who work internationally, who are on a global stage, but they were not born in an English-speaking country. I'm Daniele, I'm the host, and today I have with me Adrian Stanek from Germany. Hi, Adrian.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely a pleasure. I'm really happy you're here, and I love your setup. So bright and colorful. So, Adrian, I usually start with a let's say simple question. So, who are you? What do you do?
I'm Adrian. I'm also known as Snackable CTO because I spend most of my time in my professional life in the position of a CTO position in small to medium-sized businesses. Or actually my own business. So at the same moment, I was an entrepreneur. I'm still an entrepreneur, but more a founding engineer these days. But I'm still doing a lot of leadership coaching, which I do under the name of Snackable CTO. You can basically see that daily in videos and text posts where I talk about my learnings, especially when it comes to these high-level decision-making strategy and how to build up cultures, how to lead teams, how to overcome resistance, all those kind of things which bothered me for so many years. And which I actually learned the hard way because 10 years ago there were no internet like we know it from today with social media and business social media. So that is what I'm talking about. That is who I am.
Wow. Okay. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Adrian, you are non-native and you are a leader. You're the perfect fit for the
Yeah.
podcast. That's great. And I love your point about coaching,
Mhm.
leadership, but at the same time, keeping the technical aspect in mind. And I suppose is one big challenge everybody goes through, everybody in the IT world, at least in the tech world. I mean, not only because, leadership and daily tasks do affect other people as well, even in other industries. But let's keep it focused on this.
Mhm.
Um, so you're working as an entrepreneur and you're working internationally because your coaching service is in English and your coaching service is open to pretty much everybody who wants some support. Now, I'd like to, I don't know, backtrack a little and go through your journey. So, how did you end up working internationally, Adrian?
So for the most part, I wasn't working internationally. So we had contact to international partners for many years. So I was in Boston. We were awarded there. We had a speech and keynotes and these kind of things. But the majority of our clients were based in Germany or German-speaking areas. So it was not that necessary to actually speak English or do your stuff in English. So it was mainly German. And 6 years ago, something like that, I exited my former company and I basically found a new one together with my current business partner. And the goal was to build products. So we were more like an agency with a large product portfolio and serving multiple enterprise clients in a German-speaking area. And now we want to move on to actually serve the international black clientele, you can say. And a good starting point was to actually write about what I've learned. And I learned that writing in English is a good way to bridge these two ideas to either, let's say, increase your own skills and extend your own mindset and learnings and these kind of things by going internationally, right? And at the same time, going for international clients, which we do today. And that is basically the reason why I then started to speak more English and basically did my blog. I started to do videos. That's was several years ago, and I decided to make all those videos in English. That was one of the turning points for me. Doing that was a hard time because I was able to speak English, but not able to do it in front of camera and doing like the free speaking stuff and those kind of things. I needed to actually train a lot to do those kind of things. I think most people know what I'm talking about. Today, it's totally fine. It's all unscripted. We don't have a script here as well. So
Right.
it is you get used to it. So this is what I can say about that. I hope that was a long story for a short answer.
But it's a great story actually, because this is what I always try to communicate, what I always try to tell people. I mean, getting confident in English, in a different language, doesn't matter, we're talking about English now, is it's just a matter of practice. So getting into action, really. This is why I love your story, Adrian, because this is exactly what you did. So you
Mhm.
decided you wanted to go international, and the best way was to start communicating in English. And the
Mhm.
best way to start communicating in English, well, is communicating in English. So this is exactly what you did. And I mean, you added an extra layer of difficulty, which is the camera, which is scary, I'd say. And this is what people keep telling me. It feels scary to be on camera. And did it feel scary to you, Adrian?
Um, Not scary, but so I was on stage already. I was in front of people already. So as a leadership person, as a management person, as a founder, as an employer, right? So you do those things as such a person. In front of camera, it wasn't a big thing for me because I wasn't seeing too many people in front of me. I just was seeing, let's say, I saw the camera and I saw some form of, let's say, let's call it nervousness, right? So it's a little bit like you are nervous not to speak in front of people, but to make too many mistakes. So I had a huge problem with not coming over as a native speaker, and everyone will listen that or hear that I make a lot of mistakes, um, and I'm not a native speaker. So that was my perception, and the root for that one is I'm German. In Germany, we have a little bit like the French people. There is a lot of emphasis on speaking correctly, writing correctly. That is a little bit this high German idea, right? And I translated that into English. And I learned that in English, maybe in Great Britain, yes, but everywhere outside of Great Britain, it is not that important because English is used by so many different people that there is a let's say, lot room of play. Let's say you can do a lot of mistakes without anyone really it doesn't bother people, right? And so that was my biggest problem in the beginning. So that was my nervousness to actually communicate correctly, and that was a big problem. So I promised. Sorry, I excused myself
Hmm.
in podcasts I've done with several people. I was saying, I'm doing these things wrong and those kind of things. I was really ashamed of these kind of things, and I know that from many Germans as well who feel the same way. This is the reason why they primarily try to avoid that language.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an interesting point. It's like that sort of perfection loop.
it is.
So you want to be perfect, you want to have like this spotless language. Some people even get further, like they want to have spotless accent, before
Mhm.
getting into, I don't know, live or podcast or even like a chat. But this is a loop, it's a vicious circle because you end up hesitating, you end up doubting yourself even more, and even when you don't really need to. And I'm
Mhm.
glad you managed to crack the code in a way. You managed to find a good way for you to get speaking, because ultimately, as you were said, it's all about communication. It's not about mistakes, errors. I mean, we're all afraid. We all make mistakes. Truly, it's not about being perfect. It's about communicating.
Mhm.
And English is the language when we want to communicate internationally. Some people call it globish to make it different from the standard English. I love this. I mean, this. I don't want to open a debate on this because it's not the purpose here. But I love the approach. Like there aren't many well, there aren't as many native English speakers as English speakers worldwide. So the concept of the perfect language, the
Mhm.
concept of perfect English is, I don't know, has somehow disappeared, I feel.
It,
And
no
that's why
one
we're here
outside
anyway.
of of Great Britain is actually speaking, in my experience, the real English. So this right when you speak to native British people, they often mention that their English is more English than the other Englishes. So I actually know a lot of people that it might be not might be a little bit stereotypical, but it is what I hear, right? And and you see that a little bit in the typical. Grammarly implementations and those kind of things as the actually American English, which most people are speaking these days, as far as I know, is a little bit simpler in general than we know it. Especially when you have small talk to British people, it's way more complicated to understand them than actually do that with Americans, or even now we both are non-native speakers, right? And we use a simplified form that is easier to communicate with each other. And people who are used to use a lot of, let's say, dialects and these kind of things, that is actually hard to understand. That was I can understand British people pretty easy because I learned to speak English with mainly with British people, even before my time. So it was easy for me. But I know many people, including my wife and those kind of people, who understand very well English people, but not native speaking British people. It is a little bit that's another thing. Just for the British people out there, try to be a little bit more clean in your, and it's easier for us to understand.
Yeah, that's gonna be the call to action. Come
Yeah.
on, you British, help us.
No offense. It's a fine language, but it's simply um, it is sometimes, especially when you speak to Scottish people or something like that. That's a hurdle sometimes.
Yeah, there isn't the English. Some people again say the English is they use the plural because each one is kind of different dialect, pronunciation.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, we're all learning in a way. Yeah, even when we are native speakers. Yes, so this is why I love all of this because it gives us the opportunity to communicate and it gives us the opportunity to rethink our own upbringings, the way we started learning, the way we got into the international stage. And this is a great opportunity we have in our times.
Mhm.
And at the same time, yeah, we need to make the most of it. So without putting barriers, I believe. So, and language is an opportunity.
Language is a barrier and an opportunity. So, especially when it comes to mentoring, fellowships, consulting in general, you go deeper into emotional patterns, cognitive patterns, basic life things. You have some very, let's say, it's a very complicated small talk you do there. So you need to be very precise. You need to know a lot of vocabulary actually on both sides, to speak with people. And when you are a leadership person or a consulting person or a coach or something like that, and you're speaking English with a native person, it's actually a challenge. I think that is what most people underestimate is you actually need to be able to completely understand and be able to transmit your message understandable in a flow. So it doesn't make sense to just stick for 15 minutes on a topic because you can't formulate a sentence like you wanted or would do it in your native language. And I saw that several times for me myself. So I found ways for me to work around that until the point I was able to actually do that. But regarding our topic today, I think that is one of the most problematic things for everyone who is actually business related, and the reason why there are coaches for this, to actually be able to speak in a fluent way no matter what comes to you, which means it's a dialogue. At least it's a dialogue. So at least there are two people talking to each other. And when you have on the other side someone with a very complex problems with some words you might have never heard of because they are very, let's say, a local language, maybe a local dialect, and you need to understand and still stick in a flow and try to get the idea as quickly as possible and formulate a good response. That is what you need to do as a leadership person. You shouldn't be the hesitant person because leaders are normally people who push forward, right?
Mm.
Coaches are people who push forward as well. Coaches are actually leaders as well. And you need to be quick about your thing. So you can't say, I don't understand what you've just said. Of course, if you really haven't understood, you need to ask that. But if you do that every time, you actually cannot do what you are supposed to do. And this is what so many people are afraid of. I know from them, right? This is, I think, one of the reasons why many people stay in their native languages instead of going out and face that challenge. But in the end, this challenge is very important because what I learned as well is, maybe I'm waffling a lot right now, but that's actually the interesting part of it, is when you do that, then you learn how to communicate correctly because you have learned to communicate in the language you were basically raised, right? As a child, you learned that from the early stages. You know exactly how to communicate. There are a lot of patterns, or basically all of the patterns you know natively. That's the point, and that's the big difference between languages you have learned later. So some people are more talented, some are not, and the point is communicating correctly is basically not or should not be dedicated to a specific language. And that is my biggest learning. So if you want to be a leadership person, it is important to learn English in a way that you can communicate in English like you would do in any other language you would learn next to that one, right? So you communicate in a basically in an agnostic way everyone on this planet can understand, and you use the language as a vehicle, as a transportation device for your message. And that is the actual complicated part,
That's
which
the
is the hurdle for
challenge.
exactly for so many people. And it took me years to actually, I wouldn't say master it because I don't think I'm a master. Um, I think I'm still an apprentice when it comes to that because there are so many people who can that so basically are so well or so good in those kind of things. But this is the hurdle you actually need to take in order to become that kind of leadership person. Because if you cannot do this, you will always be afraid to go in front of people no matter what.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I mean, you put it really well there, right? It's not about the perfect language, it's about finding your own voice, I suppose.
Mhm.
So you got your voice in your native language, and then every time you learn a new language, somehow you need to fine tune so that what you say, it's an expression of what you believe or what you feel. And this is the hard part. And it is challenging because most people think, okay, I need to master the grammar, I need to study, I need to get more certification. But in reality, you need to find your voice
Mhm.
and in a way that it feels authentic when you speak a different language. And this is the idea I got. And this is, I have like daily exchanges with colleagues, with other people, like not native English speakers worldwide. And this is the actual challenge, in my opinion. So you were raised to create those mental patterns in your native language.
Mhm.
So you will never be able to replicate them in a new language. It's just impossible. That's the way the brain works. But you can create new patterns that somehow feel authentic to you. And this is what is fascinating in my opinion. And this is the best part of the learning journey. It's a challenge, as you said. It's not easy, but when you can find your own voice in a different language, that you can surely say you've been successful, even even though you keep making mistakes, which is normal. And that's how I feel anyway about
Yeah,
this.
on some point in time, when you're constantly correcting your own mistake, especially when you're writing a lot as well, right? and then you start to see how many actual native speakers don't care about grammar at all. That's the point, right? But you care so much because it was a hurdle for you. It was actually a thing. And the same goes with when I then read German LinkedIn posts, and I think to myself, well, they cannot write German, right? That this is what I then think. When I write myself, there is no grammar correction or something like that. You just write it down. It's totally normal to do so, and we need to overcome that because that's actually something which only happens in our brain. That's our personal problem. That's a form of resistance, of course, because we tell ourselves, oh, we can't go out with something because maybe people will be upset, maybe people will laugh, maybe make jokes of all those kind of things. Those little things will happen in our mind, but that's actually resistance, and I'm talking about resistance a lot because it's everywhere. And let's say I can say to everyone who's listened to that that if you are a native speaker and you want to go on the English scene, let's say, it is actually way more easy than you think. And if you want to speed it up, go to people like you, Danielle, right? And learn how to make that faster, bridge that gap a little bit, so you don't need to go the hard way. And it is always like that. You always shouldn't take the hard route because the hard route, you learn a lot in the hard route, but it is unnecessarily painful, and you have other things to do, other things to focus on, than actually to learn everything yourself, right? So this is what I can say in that moment. So don't make it too complicated for you, especially if you want to be a professional in that space. So it's not for you personally, right? Then personally, it's amateur.
Yeah.
Then it doesn't matter too much. But as soon as it's professional, you should think professional. So you need to be able to communicate in English in some way, and you need to be confident while doing that. So even though you need to go on a stage and say, "Hey, do you have a time for doing a free speaking event and on a stage?" and you can do that, actually, you know that you are in the game now. And when you can do that, you can basically do everything. And that is how I found out for myself that I'm actually confident because I had that for me. So I needed to do that one time, and I was happy with that. And I'm doing that now on stream together with Dennis. Today we stream again, and that became normal, and I can recommend that to everyone, especially when you're on LinkedIn, something like that. And you only write text posts. Start to record videos. You will see
Yeah.
that it is way more complicated to articulate this, but you will learn so much about communication.
Yes. Adrian, where do I sign? I think you've nailed it. There's this thing not going through the hard way because we're talking here and I had to learn it the hard way, unfortunately, because it's
Mhm.
I had to go through career stagnation. I had to go through being somehow invisible, even though I was working. Like I got like good feedback, but something never happened. So opportunities, and the turning point for me was when I saw people with namely lower level of English getting promoted or getting more interesting projects, and then I say, okay, there is something wrong here. And this is when I started learning about communication, and you know I had to
You
learn
you
it the
will.
hard way.
I had two learnings there. So even though I am not an employed person, so that makes maybe a difference, but I know a lot of people who are actually employed. And the interesting part is, as soon as you go on the international market, it is actually that is especially when it comes to certifications, I don't see a big need for certifications in the English speaking market, which is a huge market actually. Because it's actually your native market as well, because many Germans, for example, speak English, many companies as well these days. So you can even, being employed in Germany as an English speaking person, and that created this new layer in between where people are actually more looking toward what can you actually do and not what certifications do you have, because well, there are so many certifications out there, you can't trust all of them, and there's not really confidence and there's not credibility at all these days. So you need to be able to show it. So it's so interesting to actually be on some podcast, show show about how you think and how you engage problems. This is what is done in interviews anyway, especially in coding interviews. People want to see how you react to problems. And if you was able, or you were able to actually prove that on video screen already, then that is actually something which adds a lot of credibility to you. So don't focus too much on certifications. Focus on showing the people in an understandable language, which is English, what you are capable of doing, how you engage problems, and how you solve those kind of problems. And that is what I saw for the most part of people applying somewhere, mentees, fellows, all those kind of people we help actually had good success with that because in the end they got their jobs because they were impressing some people who made decisions and they were not going through the standard process. There are way too many people going through the standard processes right now. You need to stand out. The best way how we can stand out is show yourself and say something because that is what sticks. Just because we are humans, we work like that. We can remember faces, we can remember voices. We cannot very well remember CVs. That is, we can't. We use AI for this, right? It's a pre-selection process just for everyone to know.
Yes.
Get to the point where you can freely show yourself because you need to do that anyway in front of the person on some point in time. So better earlier than later. That's my advice here.
Oh yeah, it's a great piece of advice there. And yes, I call it get into action. So put yourself out there. But in a way, the sooner you begin, the better. So when the real thing comes, you are prepared. Um, and Adrian, so you started with by talking about, being nervous, being on stage, and then getting on camera and started recording videos. So was really that your turning point to when you reflect on where you are today? Was that your turning point, or were there more turning points for you?
I think there were definitely more turning points. So there was the moment where I turned pro, regarding on the book of Stephen Pressfield, turning pro moment. That was the most significant moment I had in my life. Not in my life, but in my professional life, to be correct. But the turning point, let's say career-wise, was to start to be able to speak English. And I really can say that hitting LinkedIn for the first time, writing blog for the first time, and releasing videos, including streams for the first time on these kind of platforms to see your 20, 30, 40 people watching you, these kind of things, in a professional space, so not Twitch or something like that. We're talking about a professional space. That was the turning point where you see or suddenly see potential you can grab and make reality in the next years. You know exactly what you need to do, which is one of the things is, of course, to be able to speak better English, to be able to communicate more and do more of those things, because these things will open opportunities for you. That's actually the potential you can make reality. And that is, I think, a turning point in my life because I, since then, was able to do or grab opportunities and make them reality for me in form of customers. I, before that, was a technical CTO. I wasn't a business person really, even though I was an entrepreneur. I was mainly doing the tech stuff. So I was a tech lead in the company, even in my own company. So there was a CEO. He made the business decisions, and he took care for customers, and I wasn't really there. And from that point on, I became a salesperson. And that is, I think, one of the interesting parts. So as soon as I was able to speak English, I could convince people, like I would be able to convince people in my own language, to actually work with me, or I recommend other people, but with a form of credibility because I was able to to transport the message I want to
Yeah.
give, right? And the message was valuable. If I'm not able to transport this message, I can't transport the value, aka I'm not credible in that moment. So a part of the credibility is to be able to communicate correctly, and that's I think a turning point for me because the amount of opportunities was huge, right? The market was huge, and before that I was just bound to this little world, which was so limited and so full of boundaries. And it was depressing for me even, right? And that helped me a lot. Even though I was starting just, let's say, a year before I actually left my own company, exited there. And that gave me the actual confidence to do that, just for everyone to understand. So before I was able to communicate in English on LinkedIn and all those kind of platforms, I was not confident enough to go the way I'm supposed to go.
And it's great that you mentioned sales, Adrian. There
Yeah.
is a lot of fear around being able to sell, but in a way, when you want to run a business, it's all about selling yourself, selling your ideas even. And if you can do that in a different language, then it means that you're getting there and you're not limited, as you said, to one market, but you can go worldwide.
Mhm.
So selling, yeah, we should somehow, um, yeah, rethink this word. It's not evil. It's just one part of the process, one important part of the process.
Or if you can't sell, well, sell yourself, right? As an employee, sell yourself as an entrepreneur, sell your product, these kind of things. If you can't do that, you are actually not a professional person at all. So you are then totally in the hands of your circumstances. So that's totally against any form of principle I'm standing for. Because as a person who when you want to be the captain of your own ship, which is you, then you need to be able to steer it into the direction you want to steer it, and not you steer it in a direction because there's so much circumstance and you're emotionally connected to that so much. And so if you actually have this boss and you can't leave the company, just because you are not able to sell yourself to someone else. And that's actually what we do, just to break it down, because we sell ourselves. So the entire process of applying to another company or pitching a product to a company or customer, whatever, is a sales process, right? So you have some valuable item, which is yourself in that moment, and you try to make others get this item, right? And use your skills, your your skills and your mindset, all these kind of things to actually improve their business. This is what you do in that moment. And if you cannot do that, if you cannot sell yourself, you will never be happy with your job, because you can't be free like an entrepreneur, or you can't find your dream job as an employee, because you will stick with what you have in some way or another, or you stay unemployed for quite a while because you can't do it, right? Because especially in an economic crisis or something like that, you will have the problem that people will basically stuck where they are, because
Yeah.
they can't make the leap into another role, which is most often the problem of communication. So when I see I have written 3 CVs, well, so many thousand people have do the same, probably do the same company. So why do you think you will get accepted? So of course, it is a little bit like marketing. Then it's a form
It
of
is,
sales
yeah.
selling. So you can write a lot of these CVs, but this is not how you find your dream job. This is how to find any job, right? And to find a dream job, you need to be more present. So I appreciate seeing people on LinkedIn talking about that they're actually unemployed and why they or what they're actually looking for, why they do that, and explain a little bit about that, because employers are listening to that kind of thing. And believe me, employers are totally annoyed from the current processes of hiring people. It is so annoying. Try to make a job ad on LinkedIn. You will see yourself what happens. You'll get 95% of scam, right? And then everyone's saying, "Oh, I don't get any responses to my CVs on LinkedIn." Yeah, because the system is totally broken. That's
Yeah.
that's the but that's the real reason. So it's not the fault of the. So show yourself and try to work around those mechanics and show yourself communicating your ideas, your value to the world outside. Sell yourself before you actually apply to a company, which is called inbound marketing, right? So just do that. It is working. So actually, it's working for me. So I see there are so many people even more effective with that out there. So it will probably work for you as well if you just do that constantly and on a regular basis.
Can
No.
use you as a case study, Adrian. You're the living proof this works.
It works. It does, but it's of course it's hard work, right?
It
So you
is.
shouldn't underestimate it. But just sending out the bare minimum of communication, which is a letter. Well, it worked 20 years ago very well because the amount of letters a company received with your job ad or your application in that moment was quite limited. So you had a good chance, especially if you had a good,
Yeah, no.
good certificate, a good gratification, something like that. That was actually a good thing, but not today, not on an international stage, where in Germany for a job posting of a senior developer, you get 2,000 applications
Just
worldwide, just one from Germany.
the
So what
sheer
do you
number,
expect there?
yeah.
What do you expect there? Most of them are automated by some tools out there, right? And don't expect that this works. And think of all the headhunters out there. They watching for people, looking out for people who stand out of the crowd and can create credibility just by talking and showing what they're doing and talking to other people and dare to go on the LinkedIn stage. That is, in my opinion, where it's so important why people like you are there helping others to be able to communicate that way. This is what I again need to say. Trainers and coaches for language is quite important because language is the reason why people will see and understand you and understand the value behind you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Adrian. So
Yeah.
yes, the main recommendation is get out there, put yourself out there, and start communicating what you
Mhm.
do. Start becoming visible in a way so that people notice you. And at the same time, I think it's a rewarding experience also for you because you start getting noticed and people engage with what you do. And it's a great feeling. It's at the beginning, it's a bit daunting, but then you reap the rewards later on. I'm
Mhm.
sure. So, Adrian, thank you very much for being here with me. It's been a great pleasure, and I've been following you for a while, talking about streaming and videos. I'm not technical, strictly speaking, but I really love what you're doing and the way you combine uh, technical knowledge with leadership and coaching. I think it's invaluable. So keep doing it. Keep rocking.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, everybody, thanks for sticking around, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye bye, everyone.